She sat at the table smiling while her mother erased her existence in front of everyone. No shouting. No tears. Just silence, the kind that hides something dangerous. They thought she was weak. Unmarried. Forgettable. What they didn't know was that she had already won, and they were about to announce it for her. This isn't a story about money. It's about dignity. About being humiliated by the people who raised you, and choosing control instead of collapse. If you've ever been underestimated by your own family, stay with me. If you've ever been told you weren't enough, this story is for you. As you watch, like this video, not for the drama, but for every woman who stayed silent while planning her way out. Comment below and tell me, would you have walked away, or waited for the right moment? And subscribe, because stories like this don't just entertain. They remind you of who you are when no one is watching. Because what happened next changed everything. At 34, my life looked unimpressive to anyone who only knew me through family gossip. I lived alone in a modest apartment, drove a quiet car, wore clothes chosen for comfort rather than status. I didn't post my life online. I didn't bring dates to family events. I didn't ask for approval. And in my family, silence was always mistaken for failure. What I valued most was control, not over people, but over myself. My mornings began early, disciplined, intentional. I read reports before sunrise, made decisions that affected thousands of employees, approved funding that would change entire communities. By nightfall, I was just a woman cooking her own dinner, enjoying the rare luxury of anonymity. That contrast wasn't accidental. It was protection. My family believed worth came from visibility, weddings, children, titles spoken loudly at dinner tables. I chose something different: privacy, autonomy, impact without applause. They called it wasted potential. I called it freedom. I still showed up when invited. Birthdays. Anniversaries. Obligations dressed up as love. Not because I needed them, but because I hadn't yet decided to close the door completely. Part of me still hoped that one day, they would look at me and see more than what they wanted me to be. That hope was fragile. And as I prepared to attend my father's 60th birthday dinner, I had no idea it was about to be tested, publicly, brutally, and in a way that would force me to choose who I truly was willing to lose. In my family, love came with conditions. Clear ones. Spoken often. Obeyed without question. My mother was the architect of those rules, and status was her favorite building material. She believed a woman's value could be measured in milestones: marriage by a certain age, children soon after, a life that looked impressive from the outside. Anything else was treated like rebellion. My father rarely argued with her. He didn't need to raise his voice to enforce her worldview, his silence did that for him. Agreement, in our house, often sounded like quiet nods and conversations that ended before they began. My older brother learned early how to thrive in that system. Successful, confident, vocal, he mirrored everything my parents admired. He spoke for them when they didn't feel like explaining themselves, especially when it came to me. Then there was my younger sister and my sister-in-law, always ready to reinforce the narrative. They called my lifestyle sad, my independence lonely, my privacy suspicious. They didn't see restraint as strength. They saw it as failure. And they said so openly, usually wrapped in laughter, so it would sound harmless. I was the middle child, which in our family meant something specific, the one who should adapt, compromise, soften. The one who was expected to absorb disappointment quietly so others could shine comfortably. I learned early that pushing back only made things worse. So I stayed calm. Observant. Polite. I let them believe I accepted my place. But every comment, every judgment, every dismissive glance was noted, stored carefully, like evidence. By the time my father's birthday dinner approached, I already understood the power structure at that table. What I didn't know was how far my mother was willing to go to enforce it, or how public she planned to make my punishment. The first sign wasn't loud. It never is. It came disguised as concern. A comment made lightly, during a family lunch, when my mother asked if I was still doing that little consulting thing and suggested I should think about something more stable. My brother smiled. My sister laughed. No one corrected her. I didn't defend myself. I never did. I had learned that explanations only fed their sense of superiority. So I nodded, changed the subject, let them believe what they wanted. But something shifted that day. I felt it. A subtle tightening in the room, like the air had decided I no longer belonged at the table. After that, the invitations slowed. Group chats went silent when I spoke. Decisions were made without telling me. When I showed up, conversations paused, just for a second, before resuming without acknowledgement. I was present, but increasingly invisible. My mother started comparing me openly to other women. Daughters of friends. Wives of colleagues. Women who understood their role. Each comparison landed like a blade wrapped in silk. She never raised her voice. She didn't have to. The message was clear, I was falling behind, and embarrassment was a tool she wasn't afraid to use. What none of them realized was that my silence wasn't confusion. It wasn't weakness. It was calculation. Because when people underestimate you, they stop watching closely. And that's when you learn everything about how they plan to hurt you next. The real humiliation didn't happen behind closed doors. My mother made sure of that. It happened at a charity luncheon, surrounded by people whose opinions she valued more than her own daughter. Crystal glasses, polite laughter, and judgment disguised as elegance. When someone asked what I did for a living, my mother answered for me. She laughed and said I was still figuring myself out, that I preferred freedom over responsibility. A few guests smiled awkwardly. Others nodded, satisfied with the explanation. My brother didn't interrupt. My sister avoided my eyes. I felt every gaze shift toward me, measuring, dismissing. I could have corrected her. I could have ended it right there. But I didn't. I folded my hands in my lap and stayed quiet. Silence was my shield. Then came the final blow. My mother leaned closer and said, softly enough to sound kind, loud enough to be heard, "Some women just aren't meant for serious things." That sentence followed me long after the luncheon ended. Not because it hurt, but because it clarified everything. This wasn't misunderstanding. It was intention. She needed me small to feel large. And in that moment, surrounded by strangers who believed her version of me, I understood something unsettling. This wasn't the worst she planned to do. The punishment didn't come with shouting or slammed doors. That would have been easier. It came quietly, disguised as concern, wrapped in smiles and family dinners where my name slowly stopped being mentioned. Invitations stopped arriving. Decisions were made without me. My brother spoke for the family now, as if he'd always owned that role. My sister followed, careful not to be seen on my side. Even my father, who once defended me in small ways, chose silence over conflict. I realized then what they were taking from me. Not money. Not comfort. Belonging. They wanted me unsure of my place, afraid of losing the little connection I had left. It was emotional exile, executed with precision. At my father's birthday dinner, the guest list was curated carefully. Important people. Influential friends. And me, placed at the far end of the table, like an afterthought. When a toast was made about family values and a legacy, my mother's eyes never once met mine. I felt something crack inside me. Not my confidence. My loyalty. They believed isolation would make me obedient. That losing them would make me desperate. What they didn't know was simple. I had already learned how to live without their approval. And they were about to learn what it meant to lose me. The days after that dinner felt unnaturally quiet. No messages. No follow-ups. No awkward attempts to smooth things over. It was as if a decision had been made without my presence, and executed perfectly. I stopped reaching out first. I wanted to see how long it would take before someone noticed. Days turned into weeks. Nothing. The silence wasn't accidental. It was strategic. They were waiting for me to break. At night, alone in my apartment, the weight finally settled. Not as tears or panic, but as exhaustion. I replayed moments I had ignored for years, the comments disguised as jokes, the comparisons, the way love was always conditional. I asked myself a question I had avoided my entire life: what if I stopped trying to earn a place that was never truly mine? That question scared me more than their rejection. Because it meant letting go of hope. And hope had been the last thread keeping me compliant. I didn't collapse outwardly. I still went to work. I still smiled at strangers. But inside, something hardened. I wasn't grieving them anymore. I was observing them. And observation changes everything. Because once you stop begging to belong, you start seeing the structure of control clearly. And once you see it, you can dismantle it. I didn't decide to fight back in a moment of rage. There was no dramatic vow, no mirror speech, no late-night breakdown that turned into courage. What happened was quieter, and far more dangerous. I realized something essential: every ounce of power they had over me came from my need to be recognized by them. My silence terrified them only when it was paired with distance. And distance was something I could choose. So I stopped explaining myself, not just to them, but to anyone who asked. I simplified my life on the outside while strengthening it underneath. I let them keep believing their version of me, the disappointment, the underachiever, the daughter who had wasted her potential. Meanwhile, I tightened my circle. I trusted fewer people. I spoke less about my work. I separated emotion from exposure. Control, I learned, doesn't come from proving, it comes from withholding. I didn't block them. I didn't confront them. I let their assumptions breathe. Because assumptions make people careless. And careless people reveal everything. This wasn't about revenge. It was about positioning. About deciding where I would stand when the truth finally surfaced, and where they wouldn't be able to reach me anymore. The moment I made that decision, the dynamic shifted. They just didn't know it yet. From the outside, it looked like I had accepted my place. I still showed up to family events when required. I sat quietly. I listened. I smiled at the right moments. And every time my name came up, it was followed by the same tone, pity disguised as concern. My mother spoke about me as if I were a problem she had already solved. My brother treated my silence like an admission of failure. My sister barely looked at me at all, as if ignoring me could erase the discomfort of my presence. They rewrote the story freely because I never corrected them. And in their minds, that meant victory. They discussed money, influence, legacy right in front of me, assuming I had none. They made decisions without asking my opinion, convinced I had nothing to contribute. Every laugh at the table landed like a verdict: you don't belong here. And I let it happen. Because there is a moment, right before people overstep completely, when they expose exactly how far they're willing to go. That's the moment you need to observe, not interrupt. I watched their confidence grow reckless. I watched my mother grow louder. I watched the cruelty turn public. And I understood something chilling: they weren't done yet. They were building towards something final. I stopped pretending to be unaware. Every word, every glance, every subtle jab became data. My mother's insistence on public embarrassment, my brother's smug corrections, my sister's veiled comments, I cataloged them all. I observed patterns. How my mother softened her tone only when she wanted to manipulate attention. How my brother repeated phrases she approved of. How my sister mirrored their behavior to curry favor. Every action had a rhythm, a predictable weight. I didn't respond. I didn't interrupt. I let them fill the room with their assumptions, their arrogance, their superiority. I learned who would bend for appearances, and who would betray their own sense of fairness just to maintain control. The more reckless they became, the more I understood the perfect moment for my move. They exposed themselves fully, not realizing that each insult, each slight, each attempt to erase me was laying the foundation of their own downfall. And in the quiet of my observation, I finally saw the leverage I had always held, the one thing they could never imagine. Because power, they would soon learn, is not in being loud. It is in knowing when to act. The moment to act came quietly, almost imperceptibly. I didn't storm in with accusations or demand recognition. I made one phone call, then another, each small step invisible to the family who believed they still controlled the narrative. I secured confirmations of my ownership and influence, legal, financial, and professional. Everything they assumed was out of reach for me was already under my control. The restaurant staff, a few discreet journalists, and my personal assistant all knew exactly who I was. The night of my father's birthday dinner, I arrived just like any other guest. Polite, composed, even subdued. My mother smiled smugly, certain she had humiliated me beyond repair. My brother made a pointed comment about my career being unimportant. My sister sneered. No one saw it coming when I subtly signaled my bodyguard, a former military officer who knew exactly when to intervene. Doors opened. Staff and cameras were prepared. And the first ripple of shock began to spread. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I let the silence do the work. Because the first move isn't the final one, it's the moment they realize the game has changed. As the room shifted, I felt the first real danger, not from my family, but from timing. My mother's voice cut through the restaurant, sharp and rehearsed, as if she sensed something slipping away. She laughed too loudly, tried to regain control, turning the attention back on me with a single sentence meant to destroy credibility. She's always made things up, she said. She lives in fantasies. For a split second, I understood the risk. If the truth came out the wrong way, it would sound like a desperate lie. Wealth revealed too abruptly looks like arrogance. Power shown too soon looks like revenge. I had waited years for this moment, and one misstep could turn the story against me. I stayed silent. I let her speak. Every cruel word, every dismissive gesture, only deepened the contrast between who she claimed I was and how calm I remained. The journalist at the next table stopped eating. A server froze mid-step. My bodyguard didn't move, waiting for my signal, not reacting to hers. Inside, I reminded myself, control isn't proven by interruption. It's proven by restraint. Still, the tension thickened. If she pushed further, the truth would be forced into the open before I was ready. And I had to decide, hold the silence longer, or end the illusion right now. There was one thing no one in that room understood yet, staying silent had already cost me something. Not money. Not reputation. Control over the narrative. Every second I waited, the lie they had built about me grew louder. My mother thrived on it. I could see it in her posture, the confidence of someone who believed she had already won. My brother leaned back, arms crossed, enjoying the spectacle. My father stared at the table, saying nothing, choosing comfort over courage once again. This was the moment I had planned for years. But plans demand sacrifice. To reveal the truth now meant giving up something I valued deeply, anonymity. The quiet life I had built on purpose. The freedom of being underestimated. Once the truth surfaced, there would be no going back to invisibility. I inhaled slowly. I let go of the version of myself that hid to survive. I nodded, just once. My bodyguard understood immediately. He adjusted his stance, discreet but unmistakable. The energy in the room shifted. Conversations faded. Even my mother hesitated, her confidence flickering for the first time that night. I hadn't spoken a word. But the sacrifice was already made. And whatever happened next would change every relationship in that room forever. I didn't need to speak. That was the trap. The room had already chosen sides without realizing it. Silence does that, it forces people to fill the gaps with their own judgment. My mother mistook my calm for surrender. She leaned forward, voice rising, pressing harder, certain she could crush whatever dignity I had left. Look at her, she said, gesturing toward me. Nothing to say. Because there's nothing there. That was when I saw it. The moment. The shift. A waiter approached my table, not to serve food, but to whisper my name with quiet respect. The journalist nearby lifted their phone, recognition dawning. My bodyguard took one deliberate step closer, not aggressive, just present. Authority doesn't rush. It arrives. My brother frowned. My sister stopped smiling. My father finally looked up, confusion breaking through denial. Everything was in place now. The lies had been spoken publicly. The cruelty was documented. No one could later claim misunderstanding or exaggeration. I met my mother's eyes for the first time that night. Not angry. Not hurt. Certain. The trap wasn't about revenge. It was about timing. And they had all stepped into it willingly, just seconds before the truth would speak for itself. The restaurant door opened softly, but the sound carried. It always does when power enters quietly. My bodyguard spoke in a calm, professional tone, the kind that doesn't ask for permission. The helicopter is ready. The sentence landed heavier than a shout. Heads turned. Forks froze midair. The journalist stood up without hiding it now. A manager rushed forward, suddenly nervous, suddenly attentive. Someone whispered my name, not as an insult, but as recognition. Then the truth unraveled, piece by piece, without me lifting a finger. A global tech founder. A major donor to hospitals and schools. A woman who avoided interviews by choice. My mother's face drained of color. "That's not possible," she said, but her voice had lost authority. My brother stammered, recalculating every cruel word he'd said minutes earlier. My sister stared at me like she was seeing a stranger wearing my face. My father stood slowly. "Why didn't you tell us?" I finally spoke. Quiet. Steady. Because love that needs proof isn't love. No anger. No triumph. Just truth, delivered when denial was no longer an option. And in that moment, they understood the cost of what they had done, publicly, irreversibly, too late to undo. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't beg for recognition or apology. I stood, straight-backed, and allowed my bodyguard to guide me toward the door. The helicopter waited, sleek and silent, a symbol of a life they had never acknowledged. The room was frozen. Journalists scribbled, cameras clicked, whispers spread like wildfire. My mother's face was a mask of disbelief. My brother tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. My sister's jaw tightened, helpless. My father lingered, guilt written plainly on his face, too late to change the public story. I walked away knowing something profound. I had not won by outshouting them. I had won by outlasting them. By withholding reaction, by observing, by choosing when and how the truth would appear. Their cruelty had been broadcast to the world, and I had remained untouchable. Months later, attempts to reconnect came, desperate, awkward, half apologies offered for appearances. I listened politely, but I set boundaries firmly. Love cannot be forced. Respect cannot be bought. And power is not proven by anger, but by the calm decision to leave behind those who refuse to see you. As the city lights stretched beneath me, I realized I was free. Free from judgment, free from humiliation, free to define my life on my terms. The helicopter lifted into the sky. And below, they were left with the consequences of underestimating me. I didn't look back. Because some exits are final, and some victories are silent.